You know exactly what you need to do. You know you need to get up earlier. You know you need to stop scrolling at midnight. You know you need to send that email, start that workout, quit that habit, have that conversation you've been avoiding for months. You've read the books. You've watched the videos. You could probably teach a class on what you're supposed to be doing with your life. And yet here you are, still not doing it. If you've ever sat there, fully aware of exactly what would fix your life and still found yourself doing the opposite, scrolling instead of working, snoozing instead of waking, avoiding instead of confronting, you already know this isn't a knowledge problem. You're not confused. You're not lost. You know the answer. And that's exactly what makes it so frustrating, because if knowing was enough, you would have already changed. So today we're going to answer a question that most people never actually get a real answer to. Why do you know exactly what to do and still not do it? What is actually happening inside your brain in that gap between knowing and doing? And more importantly, how do people finally close that gap? Not through more motivation, not through more willpower, but through something most people never even think to look at. Stay until the end, because the last part of this video is going to explain the one shift that finally makes action feel automatic instead of exhausting. And once you understand it, you'll never look at your own procrastination the same way again. Let's start with the biggest myth standing between you and the life you say you want. The myth that knowledge leads to action. We've all been taught to believe that if you just understand something clearly enough, you'll naturally do it. Learn the health risks of smoking and you'll quit. Learn how compound interest works and you'll start saving. Learn that your relationship is unhealthy and you'll leave. This is how school taught us to think. Learn the information, apply the information, get the result. But real life doesn't work this way, and deep down, you already know it doesn't. Because if knowledge was enough, nobody would smoke a cigarette while reading the warning label. Nobody would eat fast food while knowing exactly what it does to their body. Nobody would stay up till 3 a.m. scrolling, fully aware they have to wake up in 4 hours, exhausted again. The truth is, knowing and doing live in 2 completely different parts of you. Knowing lives in your prefrontal cortex, the rational, logical, forward-thinking part of your brain. This is the part that reads self-help books, makes 5-year plans, and genuinely believes tomorrow will be different. But doing, actual behavior, actual action is controlled by a much older, much more powerful part of your brain, the limbic system, the emotional brain, the part that doesn't care about your 5-year plan. It cares about right now. It cares about comfort right now, safety right now, avoiding discomfort right now. And here's the part that changes everything. When your logical brain and your emotional brain disagree, your emotional brain almost always wins. Every single time. Not because you're weak, not because you lack discipline, but because that's literally how the brain is built to prioritize survival over long-term logic. So when you know you should go to the gym, but you don't go, that's not a failure of intelligence. That's your emotional brain in that exact moment deciding that avoiding the discomfort of exercise feels more urgent than the abstract future reward of being healthier. The reward is real, but it's far away. The discomfort is immediate, and immediate always feels louder than far away. This is the first thing you need to understand. You don't have a discipline problem. You have a battle happening between 2 different systems in your brain, and one of them is thousands of years older and infinitely more persuasive than the other. Now let's go deeper, because there's a second force at work here, and it's one almost nobody talks about. It's called the comfort of the known. Your brain, at its core, is not designed to make you happy. It's designed to keep you alive. And to your brain, alive doesn't just mean physically safe, it means familiar, predictable, known. Even when the known thing is bad for you. This is why people stay in jobs they hate. This is why people stay in relationships that drain them. This is why you keep doing the exact routine that isn't working, even when you can clearly see, with total clarity, that it isn't working. Because your brain isn't asking, is this good for me? It's asking, is this familiar? And familiar to your nervous system feels safer than unfamiliar, even when unfamiliar is objectively better. Change, any change, even good change, registers in your nervous system as a kind of threat, because change means uncertainty. And uncertainty, to a brain built for survival, feels dangerous. So even when you consciously want to change, some part of you is quietly, invisibly resisting it, not because you don't want a better life, but because your nervous system associates the unknown version of you with risk, and the known version of you, however unhappy, with safety. This is why the moment you decide to finally change something, start waking up early, stop a bad habit, pursue something new, you often feel a strange internal resistance almost immediately. That resistance isn't laziness. It's your nervous system trying to pull you back toward what it already knows how to survive. Now let's talk about something even more specific, something that explains almost perfectly why you can know exactly what to do and still freeze. It's called the intention-action gap, and once you understand how it works, you'll start noticing it everywhere in your own life. Here's how it functions. When you set an intention, I'm going to start working out tomorrow morning, your brain in that moment gets a small hit of satisfaction, just from planning it, just from imagining the future version of you who follows through. This is real, measurable, and it's one of the cruelest tricks your brain plays on you, because the planning itself feels like progress, even though nothing has actually happened yet. This is why so many people feel productive after making a to-do list, even if they complete none of it. This is why buying the gym membership feels like an accomplishment, even though you haven't gone once. Your brain rewards the intention almost the same way it would reward the actual action, which means the pressure to actually follow through quietly decreases the moment you've planned it. So the very act of knowing what to do and telling yourself you're going to do it can trick your brain into feeling like the job is already halfway done. And when tomorrow arrives, and the actual discomfort of doing the thing shows up, your brain has already collected its reward from the planning phase. So the incentive to push through the hard part is weaker than you'd expect. This explains something that confuses so many people about themselves. Why do I feel motivated at night, planning my perfect morning, and then feel nothing when the alarm actually goes off? It's because the motivation you felt at night wasn't really about doing the thing. It was about imagining the identity of someone who does the thing. And imagining is so much easier than becoming. Now let's talk about fear, because underneath almost every case of knowing but not doing, there's a specific fear hiding, and it's rarely the fear you'd expect. Most people assume procrastination is about fear of failure, and sometimes it is. But there's a fear that's even more common, even more powerful, and almost nobody names it directly. It's the fear of finding out your effort wasn't enough. Here's what that means. As long as you don't fully try, as long as you send that application half-heartedly, as long as you work out inconsistently, as long as you write that book, when you have more time, you get to protect a fragile, comforting belief. The belief that if you really tried, you'd succeed. That your potential is still intact, still unproven, still theoretically limitless. But the moment you actually commit fully, full effort, full focus, full vulnerability, you risk finding out the truth. What if you try your absolute hardest and it still isn't enough? What if you finally have that conversation and they still don't choose you? What if you finally launch the business and it still fails? Not trying protects the fantasy. Trying risks the truth. And for a lot of people, protecting the fantasy, even unconsciously, feels safer than risking the truth, even though the fantasy is keeping them stuck exactly where they don't want to be. This is why so many talented, capable people underperform their own potential. Not because they can't do it, but because some quiet part of them would rather stay in the "I could, if I wanted to" story than risk finding out what happens when they finally, fully try. Let's talk about another piece of this puzzle, something called present bias, and it explains almost perfectly why long-term goals lose to short-term comfort. Every single time, even when you genuinely care about the long-term goal, present bias is the brain's tendency to massively overvalue immediate rewards and massively undervalue future rewards, even when the future reward is objectively bigger and more important. This isn't a character flaw. It's a measurable, universal feature of how human brains are wired. Here's a simple way to understand it. If someone offered you $100 today, or $150 in a year, most people would take the $100 today, even though waiting is clearly the better mathematical decision. This is present bias in action. Your brain simply doesn't weigh future rewards with the same intensity as immediate ones. Now apply this to your daily choices. Watching a show tonight feels good right now. Going to bed early to feel good tomorrow doesn't feel like anything right now because tomorrow isn't real yet. It's abstract. It's a concept. Meanwhile, the discomfort of getting up and exercising is completely real, completely immediate, happening right now in your body in this exact moment. So when you know you should exercise, your rational brain is comparing an abstract future benefit against a very real, very immediate discomfort. And in that comparison, the immediate thing almost always wins, not because you're weak, but because your brain is doing exactly what brains are built to do: prioritize now over later. This is why willpower alone almost never works long-term. Willpower is trying to use your logical brain to override a battle that's actually happening in your emotional, present-focused brain. It's like trying to win an argument in a language the other person doesn't even speak. So if willpower doesn't work and knowledge doesn't work, what actually closes the gap between knowing and doing? This is where most people expect a simple trick, a 5-minute morning routine, a productivity hack. But the real answer is less flashy and far more powerful. The real answer is this: you don't close the gap by trying harder. You close the gap by making the right action require less willpower in the first place. People who consistently do what they say they'll do are not more disciplined than you. They've simply restructured their environment, their identity, and their emotional relationship to the task, so that the right action becomes the path of least resistance instead of the path of most resistance. Let's break down exactly how this works, because this is the part that actually changes lives. First, environment design. Willpower is a limited, exhaustible resource, but environment is not. If the thing you're avoiding requires effort to access, you'll avoid it. If the thing you want to stop doing requires effort to avoid, you'll keep doing it. This is why the people who actually stop late-night scrolling don't rely on willpower. They charge their phone in another room. This is why people who actually start working out don't rely on motivation. They lay out their gym clothes the night before, removing every possible point of friction between deciding and doing. You're not weak for needing this. Every human brain responds to friction the same way. The goal isn't to become someone who doesn't need these systems. The goal is to build systems so good that you don't have to rely on willpower at all. Second, identity shift. This is the deepest, most overlooked piece of the puzzle. Most people try to change behavior first, hoping identity will follow. I'll start running, and eventually I'll become a runner. But this usually fails, because every time you skip a run, you're reinforcing the old identity, someone who doesn't really follow through. The people who actually change do it in reverse. They decide on the identity first. I am someone who shows up for myself, even when it's hard. And then they let small actions become proof of that identity, rather than the source of it. Every small action becomes a vote for the person you're deciding to be, not a task on a list you're hoping to survive. Third, reducing the emotional stakes. Remember that fear we talked about earlier, the fear of finding out your effort wasn't enough. The way through this isn't forcing yourself to not care. It's lowering the pressure of any single action. You don't need to write the perfect chapter. You need to write badly for 10 minutes. You don't need the perfect workout. You need to show up for 5 minutes and see what happens. When the stakes of a single action feel small, the fear guarding you from taking that action shrinks with it. Big transformations are almost never the result of one heroic effort. They're the result of thousands of small, almost boring actions that nobody was watching. repeated long enough that they eventually added up into something that looks, from the outside, like it happened overnight. Now here's something worth sitting with, because this is where most people misunderstand the entire process of change. You are not going to wake up one day feeling ready. You're not going to wake up one day with unlimited motivation, zero resistance, and a sudden desire to do everything you've been avoiding. That day does not exist. It never comes for anyone, no matter how successful they become. What actually happens, for every single person who eventually closes the gap between knowing and doing, is much less dramatic. They start doing the thing while still feeling unready, while still feeling resistance, while still feeling the pull of the old, comfortable version of themselves. The discipline was never the absence of resistance. It was the decision to act anyway, in the presence of resistance, over and over, until the action itself became familiar enough that the resistance quietly lost its grip. This is the part almost nobody tells you. You are not waiting to become a different person before you start. You become a different person because you started badly, uncomfortably, imperfectly, and kept going anyway. So if you're sitting here right now, knowing exactly what you need to do, the habit you need to build, the relationship you need to end, the conversation you need to have, the dream you keep postponing, understand this. The problem was never that you didn't know enough. You've known for a while now. The real work isn't learning one more piece of information. The real work is making the action smaller, making the environment easier, and deciding, right now, on the identity of the person who follows through, before you feel ready, before the resistance disappears, because it never fully disappears for anyone. The gap between knowing and doing doesn't close with more knowledge. It closes with one small, imperfect action, taken today, by someone who decided that today was going to be different, not because it felt easy, but because they finally stopped waiting to feel ready. If this video helped you understand why you've been stuck and what to actually do about it, make sure you're subscribed to Psychologic Mindset, because every week we break down exactly why we do the things we do, the patterns running underneath your behavior that no one ever properly explains. Let me know in the comments, what's the one thing you know you need to do but keep putting off? Sometimes just saying it out loud, even in a comment section, is the first small action that starts to close the gap. Thank you for staying until the very end. That alone tells me something about you. You're not someone who just consumes information. You're someone who actually reflects on it and wants to change. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.